Okay, today we're going to briefly talk about ducking and how you can use it to make your kick and bass sit better in the mix. So briefly, this is a Wikipedia page describing ducking. Ducking is an audio effect commonly used in music, especially dance music. In ducking, the level of one audio signal is reduced by the presence of another audio signal. So that is basically the sound you hear when you listen to Daft Punk, or when you're listening to a newscast on the radio, maybe a football game or something, and every time the announcer talks, the background sound of the game or the music turns itself down. That's another really common use of ducking. But I like to use ducking to control the bass frequencies and let the kick come through a bit in the mix. So this particular track is a track I wrote and released recently called The Syrup on 3AM devices. And let's check out how I'm using ducking. So if we take a listen, pay attention to how the kick and the bass don't fight each other in frequency. They sit pretty well. So how did I do that? Well, I used a ducking effect on the bass track, and every time the kick hits, it pulls down the volume of the bass, and when the kick is done making its sound, the bass volume goes back up to its normal volume level. So the way to do that, and I use a particular plugin by Vengeance. And they make great sample libraries and a bunch of stuff. So check them out; they're pretty cool. This particular plugin has two different parts to it. You don't need both, but I usually use both. This is the Multiband Sidechain. This is the part of the plugin that actually does the ducking for you, and then the transmitter transmits the key or the sidechain signal that pulls down whatever the multiband sidechain is on. So briefly to explain that, here's the sub-track. And this is the track that I'm ducking to give room to the kick, and you'll hear that whenever the kick hits, the bass goes down. They don't fight each other. So the kick is the key or the sidechain signal. And with the Vengeance plugin suite, the way you do that is by sending the kick out with the transmitter. So you could just drag the transmitter on the kick, and then now you're transmitting the kick, and wherever the multiband plugin is set, you can pick it up. I'll take this one off because I've already got one here, and it's named Transmitter 1. So I go to my bass, which is what I want to duck, and I want to duck it with the kick. So I've already pulled on this multiband sidechain plugin here. I'll open it up, and here's where the ducking happens. So let's just check out this plugin while the bass is playing. Jump back a bit, and you can see right here, this is the actual ducking effect here, and then the sound plays here. And there's another duck here, and then the sound plays there again. So if we were to turn down the strength of the ducking, you could hear that's what the original bass sounds like. And then when we turn up the strength of the ducking, you can hear the kick pulling the sound down. So usually when you launch this plugin, you're on host sync mode, which means that as it starts up, it just ducks on quarter notes, and you can affect the envelope of how it ducks here, which is basically the attack, hold, and release settings. But I like to actually get the audio signal and have the audio signal itself duck. So I select audio, I select the transmitter that I put on the kick, which is transmitter 1, and then the kick signal is being silently fed to this plugin. You won't hear it, but it is turning on and off the ducking. And this particular plugin has frequency separation, so you can independently duck the highs or the lows of the signal. And this particular split frequency knob allows you to set that. So anything above 837 Hertz would be controlled here, the ducking, the strength of it. And then anything below would be controlled by the low envelope. I like to leave it all the way up, which means that everything below 22,000 Hertz is being ducked, which means essentially that these are the ones right here that are controlling this. There's a lot of other stuff you can do with this plugin, but that's the gist of it. So let's take a listen again. And without the plugin on. And then we'll engage the ducking again. And it's subtle, but the kick gets through a lot better. On a club sound system, it makes a really big difference. Another little trick with ducking that's cool is if you have a layered bass sound with a sub and a high-end bass part, you can just duck the sub. And that way it's a little bit less obvious what's going on. The listener might not know you're ducking, but they'll still be able to feel the kick better. So for those of you that are using Ableton, there's another way to do this. You don't have to use this particular plugin here. It is expensive. I think it's like over $100 or around 120 bucks. So if you want to, you can do a similar effect using the compressor that comes with Ableton. And to do that, you drag it on the track that you want to duck. Open up the extra settings here, turn on Sidechain, and then similar to clicking audio and then selecting the transmitter, here we're just going to select the track that we want to do the ducking. So we want the kick to duck this bass, so we'll select the kick, and we'll filter out frequencies that we're not using. So I want the low end of the kick to trigger the ducking on this bass, so I'll set it to about 80 Hertz or so, 85 Hertz. And then we want the ducking to be pretty extreme in this particular case. It doesn't have to be, but for this song it does have to be. So we'll turn the ratio up all the way, and then hit play, and then as you reduce the threshold, it starts to turn on the ducking. Let's listen to it. You can hear that kind of clicking sound, so let's make the attack a little faster. Or a little slower in this case. So with the Ableton compressor, we can turn it off. You can hear it works in a really similar way. The main difference here, I believe, is that the VPS Multiband Sidechain isn't actually a compressor. It actually just uses the key signal to lower the volume and then bring it back up, which is a little bit differently than compressing the signal. So there's a little bit less artifacts in the signal when you're using the VPS plugin, which I really like. But some people don't care or prefer the compressor sound. You can use both. They both do a very similar effect. So that about wraps it up. That is how I control my bass frequencies, or one of the methods I use to control my bass frequencies. Another quick tip is I usually roll off everything around 30 Hertz as well. If you like the track, it's by Ménage à Moi, that's me. And you can find it on Beatport. It's called The Syrup, and it's released on 3AM devices.